Alright guys, welcome back. This is Sergeant Geek here, and we got another video. This is part 2 of the first video that you saw earlier in my playlist. So we're going to go into it. We're going to have another witness. First one I had Giuliani's opening and closing statements. Today we're going to have one of the witnesses at Q&A. We're going to have the Q&A for one of the witnesses that was testifying in front of the committee. So let's make it short and sweet. Let's go to the video.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jesse. Would you say, Jesse, that was an experience that you never expected to have, that much crookedness and dishonesty at the Detroit Center for Counting Votes? Were you shocked at the level of dishonesty and crookedness there?
Yes, I mean, the whole center was so kind of noisy.
That's my city, okay? And
Representative,
I know that's not true.
Representative.
I love my city, Detroit. I've been with the city for 34 years. I've been serving the citizens of Detroit, so I'm so happy. They are all nice people. I'm not saying they don't deserve this. They are nice people. My supervisor at the engineering department, I've been with the city for 34 years, from 2007 through 2010. I was the city engineer appointed by Comey Kilpatrick. And now I am the head engineer. I'm working with my supervisor and my director. They are all very nice people. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about this. My experience when I worked at the elections, first time in my life, for 2 months, about 2 months, what I experienced. But as an employee of the city of Detroit, I am so grateful to them. I'm so thankful to each and every of my co-workers. They are all very nice. So please don't misunderstand me, Miss.
Ma'am, please direct your question to the chair.
Miss Johnson, please don't take it.
Yeah. So I'll, if it's all right, we'll start here now. And Mr. Mayor, I do want to remind you. I mean, we're not going to go till 1 or 2 a.m. So I understand that this is somebody. I mean, obviously you're very brave to come forward with your story. I can tell you care a lot about your job, your work. And I appreciate you sharing it here today because I know it's been difficult for you.
Yes, it is.
With that, I'm going to open it up to questions. We'll do one question per member who wants it. Then when you're done, we'll move on. And Mr. Mayor, with the next witnesses, we're going to have to move along faster,
Sure,
sir.
we will.
All right. With that, I'll move on to Representative LaFave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming and testifying today, and I'm very glad that you've decided to be a part of our country. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have one question, as per the rule, and it might sound like a series. If anything that I say is wrong, please correct me, okay?
Sure.
You were told to enter the ballots at the TCF hall as received on 11/2.
Yes.
And that was not the date. You also were told by Mr. Chris Thomas, why should we punish voters for processors' mistakes? And Chris Thomas identified a ballot that you showed him within a signature that did not match the qualified voter file.
Yes.
And Chris Thomas said, let it go. That's fine.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, ma'am, thank you for being here today. I'm going to refer back to my notes here, and this is about, I don't know, maybe around 6:30 we got to this. You said that about, and I'm reading from my notes here, so if I get this wrong, again, feel free to correct me. But if I understand your testimony, you're saying that about 14 days before the election, your supervisor, Carla, told you that people could vote without ID. And you said that for your peace of mind, you insisted that people provide ID. Are you aware that people in Michigan can vote without identification. In fact, I've always voted that way. You're not aware of that, ma'am?
Members of the audience, please, let's be respectful. Thank you.
Ma'am, are you aware of that, ma'am?
Are you? No.
See, 0 to 14 days, 0 to 14 days, that is the restricted registration time. You have to have the ID and also the proof of residency. And if you don't have the driver's license, you have to submit an affidavit, and also you have to have a passport or something, photo ID. That's my understanding.
Okay, you're confused. Thank you.
Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you were processing these ballots, at any point in time, were there ever any poll watchers, poll challengers, and if so, were they from both parties or just one party?
Just from the Democratic Party. Actually, one day I happened to talk to one of the persons. She came from D.C. Democratic Party. I don't remember seeing anybody from the other party.
Representative C.A. Johnson. Representative C.A. Johnson, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Johnson.
Your name is Jesse
Jacob.
Jesse Jacobs. Is that your birth name?
Okay. My first name is Jesse. When I was married, my husband's last name is Jacob. When I got married in 1983, 37 years ago, I had my maiden name. That's my dad's house name. It's a long name.
Can you spell it, please?
K like kite, I-Z-H-A-K-E-K-A-R-A.
Representative, what is your question, please?
I'm asking the question.
Well, please ask.
She gave a lot of information. I just want to know who she is.
Representative, please, it's reasonable to ask the name of the person.
Yes.
I'm with you there. But now that you know it.
What was your first name?
Jesse.
Jesse.
J-E-S-S-Y, not E.
J-E-S-S-Y.
Y.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now please move on to your question, Representative.
That's it. You asked that one.
Thank you. Representative.
My middle name is Sunny. S-U-N-N-Y.
And I think it's important, Representative C.A. Johnson. I mean, if that was, we're not here to intimidate people. I mean,
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. I mean, we want to hear what happened. So, Representative Camilleri, please proceed with your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Giuliani, before you began...
I'm going to gavel this. The question is for the witness. As I told you at the end, you're able to ask a question to Mr. Giuliani.
We have 3 people actually before our panel today. Each of them is before our panel. And I know that you gave your power away to Mr. Giuliani to ask questions during this part of the testimony. That's fine. But it is now my right as a representative to ask a question of the people before our committee. This is not forced. This is not out of order. This is not Four Seasons Landscaping. This is a committee of the state legislature. I should have a right to ask a question of who is before us.
I will allow you to ask a question at the end of Mr. Giuliani, as I stated at the beginning. If you have a question for the witness, Ms. Jacob, please ask it. If you don't, then I'm going to move on.
Ms. Jacobs, I know that you've given testimony previously. We've heard your story in the media. I know that you gave testimony yesterday as well. Judge Kenny in Wayne County Circuit Court.
May I ask?
Did not give testimony yesterday.
I apologize.
Okay, Representative, please tell us your question.
Very misleading.
You've asked a lot of misleading questions yourself, Mr. Giuliani.
Representative Camilleri, please, what is your question?
My question, Ms. Jacobs, is Judge Kenny has ruled that your testimony in court is incorrect and not credible. So why should we believe anything that you said here today?
I'm not aware of any such ruling. She's never been a witness in court. It would have been impossible for a judge to
Your
rule.
affidavit was ruled
May I please finish?
incorrect and not credible.
May I have the courtesy of finishing?
No.
What?
She has never been a witness in court, so no judge could ever have assessed her credibility.
What is your question, Mr. Camilleri?
Why are we listening to your story here today if it has already been ruled incorrect and not credible by a judge in court?
It has not been ruled. Objection.
It has. Well,
Okay.
This is not a courtroom, Mr.
Representative,
Giuliani. This is a committee. Why do you keep objecting to what I'm saying here?
Representative, is there an answer to that?
Okay, you can go and ask the judge who denied that. Okay, I don't know anything about it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. Vice Chair Riley with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my question, I noticed you said you looked at some of the signatures. Well, like what percentage of the signatures would you say did not match or did not look right?
No, when I was at the satellite sites working as a processor, I always made sure the signatures matched. This was at TCF Center on November 4th.
And yeah, and at that point, did you look at any of the signatures?
Yes.
And
I showed that to Mr. Chris Thomas, and he said, let it go. It was totally different. Let it go. And after that, I was kicked out. I was told not to validate any more ballots.
So just one chance. Okay. Very good.
For that day, yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, there are no more questions for you, Ms. Jacob. Thank you for your testimony today. You're very brave coming here, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I am so thankful to this honorable body for having me and for listening to me. Thank you so much.
That's what they said over the microphone. That's what Daniel Baxter said. He said they had food for 1/3 of the workers, and that they would provide food, and it would be there shortly. Well, food never came out of these vans.
Yes, what's your point of order, Representative?
We have these people coming in here testifying, making claims. They should be under, we should have them under, what do you call it?
Oath.
Under oath.
Representative, we don't
Under
do
oath
that.
here.
Representative,
Here's my affidavit.
we're not going to do
I'm
that.
under oath.
You're out of
I
order.
have an affidavit. I'm under
You're out
oath.
of order, Representative. We don't do that here in
Mr.
Michigan.
Chairman,
We've never done that.
I wrote an affidavit.
Mr. Chairman,
We're gonna move on.
she has an
And
affidavit.
Biden never has done.
She has an affidavit under oath.
And it should not
Representative.
be under oath.
Please continue, and if we could have fewer back and forth, and maybe you can tell your story. No, I'm talking with Mr. Giuliani. We really want to get through this, and this is sort of...
Democrats took every avenue possible to commit fraud in this election, and what I saw on the 3rd and 4th was over 20 counts of fraud being taking place in front of my face. And this isn't counting, the ballots that are found in rivers, the ballots found under rocks, the ballots, that ended up.
First of all,
Representative, please.
let me tell you
Representative,
why I'm asking you to hold it.
do you have a point of order?
I love how you can
What's
just
your
say
point of
whatever
order?
you want to say.
Do you have a point of order, Representative?
She's just.
Cynthia wants to defend the fraud.
This is funny.
All right. Ma'am, please continue.
Yeah, so,
And also, by the way, can you maybe speak to your experience? I know we've heard stories of ballots being thrown in rivers, but I want to make sure we're speaking to your experience because we have limited time and we got to get our questions in and the other witnesses. So is there more to your experience? And then
well, okay, I called the FBI
okay.
on the 8th, November 8th. I talked to 2 separate women over 40 minutes. The first one gave her all my information. The phone mysteriously cut out, and she never called me back. I was waiting for her to call me back. She never called me back. I had to call them back, and they never called me back. Never got a call back. Still haven't got a call back. And I had somebody else working on it that has a neighbor that's an old FBI agent, and still haven't heard back from that.
Can I ask you just one last question?
Sure.
Melissa? So how many ballots would you estimate in front of you that you observed were counted multiple times in the machine? Can you put a number to it, an estimated number?
At least 30,000.
At least 30,000. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. And I guess I'll ask a question. I just want to understand. So what is your role with Dominion? Can you clarify that?
Hey, you're welcome. My role with Dominion was to assist with IT for the election.
So are you you're some kind of contract employee?
I was a contract employee, yes.
Okay. Of what organization?
I'm sorry.
So were you were like a contract employee of Dominion, or was there some?
So I have my resume everywhere, you know, and because I was laid off from Ford, so they just found my resume and called me and said, do you want to work the election, the 3rd and the 4th?
I see, but you were employed directly by Dominion.
Did Dominion pay me? No. PDS staffing paid me.
Okay.
Because they called me, but I was working for Dominion. Yes.
Okay.
Something very, very suspicious too, must I add, that we were not allowed to wear name tags at all. We were not allowed to talk about who we worked for. They were very secretive. They didn't want anybody knowing anything about them.
And so I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So you said you're alleging that you heard or that you witnessed ballots being put in the machine, run through, counted, and then put through again? Is that what you're alleging?
Without discarding.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I am telling you to be a fact.
And how many times did you witness this happening?
I witnessed it in a 27-hour period, thousands and thousands of times.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I will note, Dominion won't come before this committee. I've asked them, and so far they've refused, and I do want them to come before this committee because we need answers from them about how their machines work. So we're going to continue to try to get them here. But with that, I'll go to Representative Lefebvre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am not sure how I'm going to do this with one question, but I'm going to try my best anyway. So with these tabulator machines, of which you estimate there are approximately 22 to 24, I guess I'm not understanding. So you place batches of 50 on top of the machine?
No. Okay, so we're going to look, I'm going to try to explain it to you as if it's a printer, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so a printer, when the papers come out of the printer, that's where in these tabulators, that's where you would feed the 50 in, okay? Now, on top of the printer, right, so where the scanner would be, right, if it's like a 4-in-1, right, so that's where these ballots would come out after they had been tabulated, okay? So if one jammed, number 25 jammed, right, then it would put up an error. Discard, rescan. Ballot number 25 has an issue. So they would then take all the ballots that had been tabulated from the top, right, that are now on the top, the 24 that are on the top, the ones that are on the bottom that haven't been tabulated yet, okay, and number 25, the problem ballot, they would put number 25 on top, they would discard the entire batch, and then they would rescan it. Instead of discarding it, they would rescan them, counting those 24 again, okay? Now, let's say it was out of 50, number 48 that jammed. That's 47 being counted again. I'm just using you know what I'm saying? So, does that clarify that? Okay.
It does. And basically you put batches of 50 in until you're done with that precinct, right?
That's what they would do, yes. But a lot of these workers would they would get a batch of 50 and then they wouldn't get another batch for like 10 minutes. So then the ballot box was behind them, the steel ballot box. So they would have this batch of 50 in front of them for 10 minutes with no oversight. So they would run them through again with no oversight. They just had no idea what was going on. And if they did know what was going on, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? So I'm saying they have no idea what's going on. Who knows? They did. I have no idea.
That was
I know
helpful.
what my friend said.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative C.A. Johnson. You're on our list. Did you have a question? Okay. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Going back to the ruling from Judge Timothy Kenny, he writes that your description of the events at the TCF Center does not square with any other affidavits.
Yeah.
He says that there are.
My mistake?
Excuse me, I'm speaking.
Please,
Thank you.
let's let the representative finish, and then you can answer.
He writes that there are no other reports of lost data or tabulating machines that jammed repeatedly every hour during the count. He also writes that neither Republican nor Democratic challengers nor city officials substantiate your version of these events. The allegations simply are not credible, is what Judge Kenny writes. So my question for you is, you're making claims here today that there's systematic fraud in what's going on in our elections. Are the courts also tied up in that fraud?
Let me tell you what I did by accident, okay? I gave Channel 7 an interview that they tied in to that and made me the witness that's uncredible. Guess what? There's going to be a couple behind me that are going to say the same thing I just said. And
The witness before you was also proven not credible as well by the same
she
judge.
wasn't, because she wasn't even there.
Representative Camilleri, let's let her finish,
She had
please.
talked. The very
Ma'am,
first time.
So I just want to understand. I don't know what exactly all the things that are being talked about there are, but can you tell us what you said today is the truth? Is that correct?
Sir, I wrote a written affidavit. Yes, it is 100% true.
Okay, and did other people observe this?
Absolutely. And behind me, you're going to hear a couple.
Okay, and we'll hear
And
from them.
let me just
hopefully.
state this. I was an IT worker on the stage. I was working with Dominion. I had no poll workers were not allowed on the stage. The data loss, nobody would have heard about that besides me, Samuel, and Nick. Okay? Just like nobody knows that Samuel went to the Chicago warehouse besides me because I worked for Dominion. They didn't. They're not going to hear that part. You know what I mean? The poll workers are not going to know that Samuel, they're not even going to know who he is. They're not going to know that he went to the warehouse.
So I think what Representative Camilleri is asking is perhaps why is it that more people, and I know we have a couple here today, but why is it that we're not having more people come forward? I mean, it seems like if there was all this widespread fraud that, we'd have dozens and dozens of people.
I'll tell you why. My life has been destroyed. My life has been completely destroyed because of this. I've lost family. I've lost friends. I've been threatened. My kids have been threatened. I've had to move. I've had to change my phone number. I've had to get rid of social media. Nobody wants to come forward. They're getting threatened. Their lives are getting ruined. I can't even get an actual job anymore. I can't. Because Democrats like to ruin your lives. That's why.
All right. Let's
just like they do to Trump.
Let's move on to Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously these allegations are very troubling. This is my question here. If these ballots were run through multiple times, as you've alleged, I think you said possibly up to 30,000 times, definitely thousands of times being counted. When we examine the poll book and see who voted, and we count those numbers,
Yes.
would they then not line up with the total number of votes coming out of Detroit?
Just later. The poll book is completely off. Completely off.
Off by
That
30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000.
And
That poll book. Why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So my question then is if the
Guess how many? Wait. What about the turnout rate? 120%.
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, please.
So the poll book number, there's two things that could happen here. Either the poll book number, if ballots were counted multiple times, there's two options. Option number one is that the poll book numbers are not going to match.
They don't.
The actual. Not by thousands and thousands of votes. That's not what we see right now.
Take a look again. Take a look again.
Option number two is that they essentially were filling in names of people who didn't vote.
Dead people too?
So is that?
Let's let
your
Representative
suggestion?
Johnson ask his question, and then when
I
he's
thought that
done,
was his answer. Okay.
Well, I guess that's my question here is why we're not seeing the poll book off by 30,000 votes. That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I'm just saying the numbers are not off by 30,000 votes. So
I know what
are you
I
saying
saw.
that they're filling in?
I know what I saw, and I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison.
Okay.
Did you?
Okay,
I'm just trying to ask you a legitimate question here.
Yeah, let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then don't interrupt him, and then if you want to respond to it, that's fine. And did you have more, Representative?
Yeah, I guess I just want to keep following back up with the poll book. So are we saying that the poll book is either wildly off or that they are filling in names?
It's wildly off, and dead people voted, and illegals voted.
Okay.
So that's my answer.
I think we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Representative LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, ma'am, can I ask you a simple question?
Sure.
When did you convey the narrative? When did you communicate substantially the narrative that you've given us today? At what do you recall the date that you gave that to the Trump legal team, to Mr. Giuliani and the woman sitting next to him?
To Mr. Giuliani,
to the team.
To them, I'm working with a different attorney.
Well, they're here with you now, and they heard your story, and it's not the first time they heard it. When did you tell them?
I have
when did you give them essentially the narrative?
To Mr. Giuliani.
Pardon? I'm not asking you to finesse here. I'm asking you, when did you tell them the narrative that you're telling us now?
When did I write my first affidavit? November 8th.
Thank you. That's a great place to start. Thanks.
Right.
All right.
But does that answer your question? Because
I think it does.
It was sent to Lauren McLaughlin.
I think we're good here. We'll move on. So thank you, Representative LeGrand.
Just clarify for the record, I met her for the first time today and talked to her for the first time yesterday.
But if you're saying the affidavit is essentially consistent with her testimony today, and that was submitted on November 8th, that's great. That's what I wanted to know.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
His statement was, I think his statement was, if the affidavit matches the testimony today, you're good. Is that what you said?
Of course it matches it.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we'll move on with that, thank you both for your testimony. We're going to go on to questions now. I'll start with Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. I think it's the most compelling testimony we've had tonight. You talked about the 6-foot rule, people being kicked out for that. There was a court case prior to the election dealing with this and saying that you had to allow a poll challenger to break that 6-foot rule to verify information. All right, I've got pretty good eyesight myself. I can't see someone's written address from 6 feet away. Sure. So the court case made it very clear that they did have to allow that. Now, when you're not challenging, you have to keep your 6 feet. Were people allowed to break the 6-foot rule to challenge? And then my second part, when these Republican challengers were kicked out, were they allowed to be replaced by another one? Because it was very evident that there was plenty of other possible Republican challengers there. Were they replaced by one or not?
I'll take the first, you can take the second. The first one, when you said the 6-foot rule, we were in fact given a paper with these rules saying that we can break the 6-foot rule when we have to challenge a ballot. We even had the printed paper with us, and when we would show it to the supervisor, he'd say, we are enforcing the rules that we were given. That's the rule your team that sent you gave you. We don't have to abide by it because that does not apply to us. And we have to keep low profile. You have to understand if we don't want to be kicked out. If we don't want to, I may not be because I'm brown. But all I'm saying is, but that was my trump card that I used all day. But then the thing is, that's not a privilege for a white person. So white people, I could see, were not even daring to ask a question because if they were even a little bit louder, they would say, you're disturbing them. So they need to get out. And you have to understand the poll workers were ganging up with Democrats. They were all in on the same team. And the only people that are being isolated are the Republican, white male Republicans. So that's racism. If people ask me, was I ever treated unfairly? I would say rarely. Come to India, you will know what racism is. But here, no, I've been treated with a lot of respect. Now I see white people are being treated as, so much worse than, I was ever treated. So those people were not able to really loudly challenge because they will get kicked out. They did not want to abide by that rule where we can break that 6-foot rule to challenge a ballot because they didn't want to listen to what we had to say.
As per the second question, no.
They were not being replaced.
Republicans were not replaced. So when a Republican challenger was escorted out, they were not allowed to be replaced by another one.
The only ones welcomed in were the media, no challengers from our side. But I would say there was two separate systems. There was our systems where we were exceeded COVID capacity, fall in line, follow the rules, and then there was the friendly, welcoming. Oh, you're the media. Come on in. Oh, who are you with? You're with them. Come on in.
Another thing I also have to say is when the GOP people were getting escorted out with or without handcuffs, every poll worker and all Democrats stood and clapped like it was some kind of, they all won a lottery ticket. And that is exactly when I decided I'm going to do this because that was heartbreaking because these people were doing a job, a volunteer job. They were not getting paid. They all were leaving their work to be here for their country to ensure election integrity. And they were treated like criminals, and that's not fair.
Not America. That's illegal.
Representative LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just ask you the same question I asked the last witnesses. When did you, if you file an affidavit here, or when did you first make Trump's lawyers, when did you give them this story substantially?
I didn't make any Trump lawyers because I was working for Election Integrity Fund. I gave my affidavit the same day on November 4th.
Okay, so
I don't know what happened with those affidavits, and I've never met anybody from Trump team until, not even now. I haven't even met anybody yet.
Okay, you filed. So you're saying you filed an affidavit on this on November 4th?
November 4th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
I, in fact, gave all the ballot numbers, the last names, the table number, everything that I observed the same day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative LeGrand. Next, we'll go to Representative Riley.
Thank you. I just wanted to try to understand what this was like when somebody tried to challenge a ballot. So you would say I challenge a ballot, then what would happen after that? What was a series of events?
Even before the supervisor or the poll worker would respond to the challenge, the Democrats would just pounce and say, what are you challenging? And then when we try to give them what was the basis for challenge, like as I said, they had no clue because they were not trained. Their only training was to block the GOP people. So when we would say this is what we are challenging, they'd be like, they're clueless, obviously. And then the poll workers, they would be hostile. And they're like, we are not going to stop what we're doing. If you have a problem, you go take it up with the supervisors. They were all in on it together, so nobody was going to listen to it. Not a single challenge was ever entered. And this was the same thing happening.
So then if you went to the supervisor, he would not do anything?
No, nobody would do anything.
Okay. So in addition to that, thank you. In addition to that, when there was no Democrat challenger, which I witnessed in the minority of times, I would make a challenge, and the head of the table would say, what's wrong? And I would say, this is wrong. And they say, no, that's not wrong. And I said, no, I'm challenging it. So, for example, just one example is I challenge you for filling in the Democrat straight ticket. Is that, can I challenge that? No, it's not a challenge. No, document, just push it through. That's what they did.
Oh, thank you.
Representative C.A. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, please indulge me. As a woman from the city of Detroit, a woman who has lived, I'm talking about me now, who has lived in the city of Detroit all of my 62 years, and having spoken with many, and by the way, thank you, having spoken with many people who worked the TCF or TFC. TCF.
All right, let's let Representative Johnson continue, and please get to your question, Representative.
I will. So my question really to you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to repeat it again. These people, our guests, are sharing information, just sharing and sharing and speaking and speaking. No one is under oath. The world is watching us right now, and the world is watching right now, and there are one person after another who's testifying or who's making allegations, because that's exactly what they are, allegations of wrongdoing in the city of Detroit. I wonder, and I'm going to ask you the question, did you see any cameras at the TCF Center? All right, so.
And Representative, I just want to remind you, I think it was the purpose of today's hearing to hear from people across Michigan who witnessed things at the TCF Center. That's why we're here.
Well, here, and I'm not going to argue with you about that. Okay, so they're here, but they're taking so much time, and I see no Detroiters. There is one Detroiter. Stop that.
Please continue, Representative.
And there is one Detroiter, but I have many emails. Since there's no one who you have in this room to represent Detroiters, except a couple of us in this room, I have emails from Detroiters. We've taken, 2 hours?
Did you have a question? I'm willing. Please stop yelling. People in the audience, let me handle this. Representative, listen, we've had hearings in the past, as you know. We'll have more hearings. Today, we've invited Mr. Giuliani, and Mr. Giuliani has brought forward witnesses that he says have firsthand knowledge of fraud. That's what we are doing today.
And if we want to find out if...
Please let me finish.
Yes.
All right. So if you want to do other hearings, we're doing more hearings. But today we're here to hear from these people. So do you have a question for these witnesses?
No, I have some concerns, many concerns, and I want to just share with you
out of order.
What the concerns
out of order.
are.
Do you have a point of order?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a point of order?
Yes.
What is your point of order?
Point of order is to have them under oath.
You're out of order. As I've said, this is something that is not done here in this state. It's really only...
it may not be done under the state, but you're allowing people to come in here and lie, and I know they're lying.
Representative, you're out of order. I've indulged you, but you're out of order, and we're going to move on.
On behalf of my witnesses, I would like to point out that every single witness we've presented here has sworn an affidavit as to all of these facts
And so,
Representative, please, I gave you some room there, but we're going to move on. We're going to go
May
now.
I say something, please?
Sure.
If that is what you want me to do, I would do it. And I will still repeat the exact same thing I watched. And you know what? I also want to say one thing. If it is a lie, it may change because a liar has to have a lot of memory power. If it is truth, you can ask me in the middle of the night, it'll still be the same.
All right, I'm going to take this here. Please stop. We're going to move on now to Representative Lefebvre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. Audience members, we're not going to be able to get to the end of this if we continue with interruption. So I would ask a little bit more patience with us. I have two questions, as we have two witnesses. I hope that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
If there are relevant questions, I will let you proceed.
If they're not relevant, Mr. Chairman, please rule me out of order. I would appreciate it. Question number one, as I heard from, could you say your name again?
Hema Kolanagi Reddy.
Hema, thank you.
You want to try that?
I'm going to try it once. I'm not going to try it twice because I got a bad memory. I heard that there are sequential ballots from one street called Goddard Street that have no dates.
Correct.
Approximately how many would you say?
Each box would have 50 ballots. There were about two, three boxes there. I was already tired because we have no chairs. So I took down, after 20, 25 names, there's no point because you can see what's going on. So I immediately wrote down all those details, gave a sworn affidavit to Election Integrity Fund. And I said, this is what I witnessed. These are the names. These are the ballot numbers. And this is not the address, but then I told them that it's Goddard Street is something that just stood out because you can see it on the highway, so I know that name. I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. And we were told not to challenge anything at that point because they said this entire process needs to be challenged, so don't challenge. Try to stay in. Try not to get kicked out. So that's what I was doing.
Very helpful. Thank you. Andrew, approximately how many duplicate ballots did you see in general? And then, if you could, approximately how many of those duplicate ballots, and these are your words, not mine, do you believe were stolen or taken off of the table and brought to places that you believe they shouldn't have been brought to?
So, as my responsibility to stand in the center of the room by the duplicate table, an employee would come up and need a duplicate ballot, right? For example, just to layman's term, let's say there's a coffee stain on the ballot, right? Which none of these ballots had any real issues from as far as I know. They're all tabulator issues. But they would come grab a ballot, and my responsibility was to follow them to their table, to be the challenger, to observe over it. So there would be me, there would be the workers, and there would be a Democrat challenger, and we would observe over it. Throughout the entire time I volunteered, I would say between 24 to 36. And there were times where we had people stationed around the room. And so if there was someone who was stationed, like a Michigan GOP volunteer, right, was in a specific area, I would tell that employee, hey, watch over this duplicate ballot because I need to run back to the center of the room in case someone steals more ballots again. So they would do that. And if no one was there, then I would watch over it. And I watched over maybe 2 to 3 dozen throughout the whole night. So that's the first part of the question. The duplicate theft started in the beginning of the night. Roughly 10:30 p.m., 10:15 p.m., I saw theft of duplicate ballots where they would grab 3, 4. So no clear number. The number that I saw was probably in the first shift, I would say over half a dozen, easy. Second shift, it was more hectic, and I would say roughly the same thing. But you also have to take and consider that the third shift from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. the next day, and also the 1 a.m. shift, because people were leaving at 2 a.m. and 1 a.m. They wouldn't stay until 5 a.m. because there were less people volunteering because they're weeding off. That the table was guarded less, and we have less people, so there's more opportunity for theft. Does that help a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if what you're saying about the tabulation of ballots is true, and that some of these ballots were counted multiple times, why is it that there are not more ballots than those who are tabulated in our poll book?
I do not know how your system works. I do not. One thing I know is there were several ballots that were not in the poll book or in the system, and they were being entered manually. So how are you finally taking a tally of it? I do not know that. All I'm here to tell is what I witnessed. I do not know, end of the day, how you put all of this data together and how you come up with a number. And if it's tallied like a balance sheet, great. I don't think we would be here if that tallied. My best guess is it did not, so that's why we are going through all this.
So what I'm saying is that, in total, the registered number of voters in Detroit is about 500,000 around. Mm-hmm. The total ballots cast was around 250,000.
Okay.
And so we don't see multiples here, and many other people have alleged that there were far more people who voted than those who live in the city of Detroit, and that just does not add up.
Thank you, Representative.
That was not part of my testimony.
I know.
I think you asked a question, and she said she wasn't familiar.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I think we appreciate it. I did want to ask you though, do you have any? I mean, both of you have been there on the front lines. You've been there in the TCF Center. You've talked today about what you've witnessed. Do you have any suggestions for us as legislators on policies or things that we should look at in terms of how do we prevent some of these things from happening to people like you again in the future? Have you put any thought into that? Like if you were to see new laws or things that need to be looked at in terms of preventing in the next election some of these things from happening at the TCF Center?
I would give you my perspective as being an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a country where a lot of things go wrong. Our countries are known for corruption. But when it comes to elections, there is, from what I've seen here to what we used to do back in India, it is a lot more organized now because we have an identification system. And the fact that now, as the other representative said, that you can actually show up and vote without an ID, it's shocking. How can you allow that to happen? Like, a lot of people think all Indians look alike. I think all Chinese look alike. So how would you tell? If some Chow shows up, you can be anybody and you can vote. And if somebody with my name, you can't even tell my name. Anybody can vote on my behalf. So ID should be the basic requirement.
Please, let's let her testify, everyone. We want to allow the witnesses to speak. Thank you.
ID should be the basic thing, and there should be a cutoff date as to when you can request the mail-in ballots. It can't be like you can show up the same day and request it and give it the same day. The whole purpose of the ballot is defeated. I think you can put a lot of measures, maybe put policies that this does not get repeated because, and again, the fact that there was not a Republican present on every counting board, that was also a shocker. A lot of people I know from my own church, they wanted to work as a poll worker, but they were told that the positions were full, so they don't need any more Republicans. If only there was a Republican present at every table, maybe a lot of this would have been avoided. And also, I think, that the whole vitriol of the entire poll workers that were there, that to me was the shocking thing. I would expect a lot more respect. These are all fellow Americans. If it was towards an immigrant like me, at least maybe it's understandable, but these are all fellow Americans. Why would you hate them just because of their political affiliation? Maybe that could change. We're talking a lot about hate, BLM and everything. How about we also just extend it to, the white males or, whoever is being also treated very, that's discrimination what I noticed. And this is an outsider perspective.
Do you want to answer the question? Do you have any suggestions for us?
I'll be brief.
Yep.
I mean, simply we just can't let it happen. The way we do it is up to you, and that can change. You have to think about it. Law changes over time, and it's going to continue changing for the next thousands of years, but we simply can't let this happen, because if we don't let this happen, then reality will change for the next thousands of years. So I would suggest maybe better enforcement immediately after the election, because clearly we're now heading into December. We don't want to cut it this close. We need, in the short term, a body that can say the day after the election or 2 days after the election, there's 20,000 dead voters, wipe them out immediately. And this should be apolitical, not political. They're just clearly dead. Have the database enforce it. Why are dead voters still now? They're certified now, and I'm not trying to make a political statement, but we certified that knowingly.
Thank you. Well, I know you both are very brave coming here today, and I understand it's shocking the things that you've said today about what you've witnessed at the TCF Center. So thank you both for your testimony. We appreciate it.
All right, guys, you've seen the video. You've seen what was going on. Like I said in my previous video, the way the Democrats and the Republicans are acting up there, you can obviously tell who's a Democrat, who's a Republican. It's plain as day the way they're treating these people. And these are citizens of their state. These are not people from Texas or California or Ohio or Utah or Nevada. These are Michigan citizens, and this is the way they're being treated. So you can understand why they feel a little hostile coming up in front of the committee and testifying in front of these representatives. But that's it for this video right here. I'm going to have another video coming out with another Q&A from another witness. I'm trying to keep these videos short because the highlights that I pulled, the reels that I pulled, is about total up to 2 hours long. So I'm going to break that down so it's a short video so you guys can check it out. Once again, for the full entirety of the hearing, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. And once again, hit the like and subscribe button. Let me know what I'm doing on this channel that you guys like, and anything you guys want to see, let me know. I'll put it on the channel. And once again, I'm going to mention it again. Don't forget, I got that Christmas giveaway going on right now all the way up to December 31st. I'm going to leave a link in the description so you guys can enter the contest. Maybe win yourself something. It doesn't cost you anything. All you got to do is just enter the contest, possibly win yourself some free stuff. Once again, this is Sergeant Geek, and I'm signing off.